discussion titled Economy and Future of Tourism and Travel.
Intersection of economic trends and tourism's future, addressing how markets and travel patterns are evolving in the post-pandemic world. The panel features esteemed experts. Moderating this session is Zafer Ali Yavan, founder and CEO of Zai Strategy. Efendim buyurunuz, Zafer Ali Yavan.
Welcome on stage, please.
To invite you to the stage, our moderator, and here he is. Welcome, sir. Please join me. And panelists include Dominique, Exmann, Commercial Associate Director at Tourism Economics, Sayın Dominique Exmann. Welcome. Hi, please have a seat. Abdullah Yüksel, Vice President of the Turkish Statistical Institute. Hoş geldiniz efendim. Ve Engin Yaşar, Vice President of Mastercard. Hoş geldiniz efendim. And Mr. Yavan, the stage is yours.
Efendim herkese günaydın. Güzel bir gün diliyorum.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Welcome to Tourism Investment Forum 2024. This is the 4th edition of this event, and I hope it will be a very fruitful one. Now, today's panel is tackling an important topic. We will be focusing on the relationship between economy and tourism, and we have a distinguished panel joining us today to discuss this topic. But of course, we have a limited amount of time. We need to wrap it up in 40 minutes. We will have 3 presentations, and we will have a few questions after each presentation. I won't be able to take any questions from the floor. I will try to ask questions on your behalf.
Of experts with us today, Dominique Exmann, Commercial Director from Oxford Economics. Oxford Economics, as you may know, quite an essential economic research institute based in London, but everywhere. They forecast everything, including tourism statistics. Welcome, Dominique.
Thank you.
Abdullah Yüksel, Vice President of TURKSTAT, Turkish Statistical Institute. He is responsible for major, most fundamental data generation process in TURKSTAT, including national accounts, and today is our subject matter, tourism statistics. He is responsible for. Abdullah Bey, hoş geldiniz. Engin Yaşar, Vice President of Eastern Europe, Mastercard, quite an expert in his field. Possibly is going to share with us some real-time spending perspective of tourism industry in Turkey. So, without losing time, I'd like to leave the floor to Dominique for her presentation. So you have some 8 minutes.
Yes, I'm going to go very fast.
Please.
Sit up. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I was flying into Istanbul last night and amazed at how much the city has grown since I've been here last. I was thinking to say hello. My name is Dominique Exmann, and I work with Tourism Economics, which is the tourism division for Oxford Economics. In a moment, I am going to share some of the travel data and trends and how this fits in with economic fundamentals. Here at Oxford Economics and Tourism Economics, we blend tourism data with economic drivers to deliver insights that no one else can. And well, this is our sweet spot, and it's really where the magic comes alive in the data that you're about to see. But first things first, thank you to the team today for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here at the Tourism Investment Forum. Make sure I've got my clickers going. So what I want to do today is walk you through some of the incredibly great data that our economists produce. The big picture here is that we are seeing and entering a growth phase. Global tourism arrivals are now aligning with economic drivers because we have passed the dynamics of rebound. That's post-pandemic. The graph here shows that we're entering into unprecedented travel numbers. And what I want you to do is take a look and first zoom out. You can see here that the key point is travel growth is continuing. It did plateau somewhat for 2022, but even despite that, we're now looking at record levels of growth. If you zoom in on that top line, you see the green line. The Middle East is leading the way at 34% growth. And then if you zoom into the bottom line, you can see there that APAC hasn't quite caught up. And a big contributor of that is China, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. At this point, you might be asking, is this something to worry about with APAC? And to explain that, I'll dig into the trends a little bit more, but the short answer is no. The broad-based growth here, if we look at 2024, is that 108 of the 117 countries are reporting monthly year-to-date data growth, and a third of these destinations are 20% above growth relative to 2023. Now, if we move on, global travel is on track here to reach record new levels of travel. You can see here that that's 1.5 billion. This here, what we're looking at is the average length of stay. This is where travel should have been if you look at the dotted travel lines, had COVID not occurred. The average length of stay here is around 2 nights longer, and we are seeing travellers spend more time in destination and obviously spending more money as a result. Moving on to our business B2B TIM, travel industry surveys, you can see here that this is backed up by confidence and optimism from our travel industry surveys. The short term is less good, but the mid to long term remains optimistic. So the question becomes, is this confidence being supported by some of the economic drivers? And well, there are some concerns and risks, which we'll get into, but the short answer is yes. Travel is still a priority, and you'll see in a minute why Turkey has a golden opportunity to capture demand. This shows the growth trends for the global economy. Let's look at the US for a second. It is getting a lot of attention, but it's much more of a moderation in growth from some pretty high rates. The EU zone is improving, and you see that the emerging markets are actually an improving trend as well. And now, if we look at the European international spend by category, it is rising. This is a really important point and slide to point out here. This is linked to the average length of stay that I just spoke about and that I explained. But the spend per night has also been rising. When we look at traveller spending patterns, key categories of spending in the last couple of years have gone up. And we have seen spending more on accommodation, for example, per night. And this is linked to more businesses being confident to charge more, despite some of the softness that we're seeing in demand. But the real standout here is that bottom blue line. If you see that, this is where we have a downward trend on fares, and this is linked to air carrier traffic. Since the pandemic, it has been increased as businesses have been passing on some of those higher costs, and people have been prepared to pay for it. You might see that there's a jump there on the transport line in 2023. However, if we adjust this to wider inflation and put this into real price terms, you can see here that the spend per night hasn't quite kept pace with the wider price increases. And well, this points to two things. One, not all of the costs have passed on. There has been a hit to the bottom line for a lot of businesses, and these cost increases are hurting. And yes, further cost increases might hit a tipping point and really be that impediment to growth that you see here. The second thing that we're seeing is that people are being very cost conscious when they're traveling, and there is some trading down going on. People are looking for value for money. And if we take a look at the B2B surveys that I mentioned before, accommodation and flights is the real standout here. But what it's saying is that there are concerns about price, but yes, still value for money. For the bottom line, you can see that it's all about affordable luxury, the key word being affordable here. People are cost conscious, but they're still looking for value amongst that. This graph here is the travel intentions as one example for US high earners. If you cast your eyes to the left, you see that these are the bottom earners, and this is really where the cost of living crisis is hitting. If you cast your eyes to the right-hand side, this is the middle class income earners above 150K. They are still prioritizing travel in the next 6 months. What we're looking at here is travel being prioritized across advanced economies and developing markets. The slide here is self-explanatory, and it's essentially saying that it is growing in both cases. And notably, with regard to China, when we deep dive into those developing markets, one of the most important emerging markets of all is China. But when we break it out this way, what's important to understand is the sheer volume of total consumption. Here in 2019, you can see that that's 14%. China has economic uncertainty at the moment, but leisure travel is still being prioritized. And if you cast your eyes, to 2019, you can see, yeah, that's about 15%. Now if we move on to close proximity markets, for the outbound travel, I'll get my slides going. For the outbound travel trends by source markets, major Western markets have recovered. These close proximity markets are important to Turkey, the UK, Germany, for example. But there is a contrast when we look at APAC. Japan and China are not back, 30-40% below 2019 levels. There's still a long way to go for them. When we look at progress in other markets, you can see here India has well recovered from 2019 relative levels, which is the red line. Now, this brings home the point for Chinese travel. What we're seeing here is that Chinese travel was a domestic recovery first, regional second, and we do expect that to widen in the next 2 years. If you cast your eyes, an interesting data point is the Vietnam spike in March 2024. And what you're looking at here is the implementation of visa-free travel and seeing an immediate impact there with regard to Chinese arrivals. So here the picture is clear for China. Essentially what we're saying is that it is coming back, but slower, and we really expect the value and volume there to be realized in 2026. Just to wrap this up and bring this point home, China is the outlier that you see here. In terms of relative numbers, it's much higher than some of the base values of the other markets. With regard to India, there is some really eye-watering growth for this source market. This is about the middle class improving, and we expect that to be millions of extra new travelers coming into the market. Of course, we are aware of risks, and what you can see here are the GDP impacts. Everything from a global travel perspective is great, as I've pointed out so far, but of course there are some macro risks. We do, however, see the blue line here as the most significant risk, and that's all related to interest rates, and if they remain much higher, and if inflation increases. Also, our economists are looking at the tourism risks. For example, here we're looking at the European overnight arrivals, but even in that downside, you see that it's still a positive growth story. And back to our surveys, the key point here is that the top 3 concerns are all related to price. More broad-based destinations. Essentially, we've run a little over time, so I'm just going to say that by the end of the decade, we are forecasting for international visits to be 2 billion. And the question here becomes, where is the opportunity for Turkey as new destinations? We know that travelers are looking for more value, but also more culture, more authentic experiences, new destinations. Turkey is really primed to capture that demand. And this slide really backs that up. So if you cast your eyes to the left side, we have a lot of the usual suspects, France, Spain, US, Italy. But if you zone in on Turkey and look at the green diamond, we're seeing really excellent growth here. If you compare that to Greece, Greece is outperforming Turkey in terms of growth, but it's not at the same level values. It's roughly 20 million extra arrivals already. And so with that, thank you for giving me your time today. If you open your phones, you can scan this QR code and I'll give you a copy of the slides to study later and come and chat to me. Thank you very much.
Dominique, thank you very much. Quite an expose. A couple of points, a couple of fundamental points that I have noted. We are now at 2019 levels in terms of arrivals, but in terms of spending, still we need to go for some 4 or 5 years from now in order to catch 2010's trend. Affordable luxury travel and cost-value comparison is essential from now. In terms of geostrategic risk, scenario is skewed to the negative side. Fine. And large hubs are okay in general relative to others. 2 tough questions, if I may. Then we continue with Abdullah Bey. We have a high inflation, recession, combat, and most possibly inflation are going to be normalized. However, there is going to be a pressure over the growth rates of every region, including industrial parts, other parts of the globe. Do you think this pressure over income, GDP growth and all that, is it going to be a constraint for furtherance of tourism development in your scenarios, etc., rather than prices? I mean, the income effect, could it be a constraint for furtherance of tourism in your scenarios? That's the first one.
Yeah, big question. Great question. The first is that GDP is an average. When we're looking here at tourism economics, we're essentially thinking about this in 2 ways. One is that the middle class is rising and staying stable for the next, the middle class is rising in the next 5 to 10 years. The income level has not come down. Wages are remaining very stable. So we're expecting, as a second point, that travel, as I was explaining in my slides, is still being prioritized. Many people seeking in the middle classes new experiences, new destinations. So we remain really optimistic with regard to that point.
again, an optimistic assessment, but I have to agree anyway. Second one is I noticed that real prices are going down in all subcomponents of tourism, accommodation, flights, and all that. That means hotels don't make money, right? Real prices are if you adjust the tourism prices with the general inflation rates, real prices are going down. From an economist point of view, that means hotels, these people around here, should be making money. Do you agree with this?
Well, what's important to understand there is that there's a small nuance, and that is that people are value conscious, but they're not budget conscious. They're not looking to drive down to the cheapest flight or the cheapest hotel. As I was explaining in some of the slides, and with some more time we can give some more information, but essentially those middle classes are looking for more value within that, and therefore we again remain very optimistic with regard to that.
Fine. Thank you, Dominique.
Pleasure.
If I may, I'd like to continue with Abdullah Bey. Abdullah Bey, please make your presentation, then we're going to continue with some two tough questions.
Okay, thank
Please, floor is yours.
Teşekkürler.
Abdullah Bey Türkçe yapacak konuşmayı ama
Mr. Abdullah is going to speak in Turkish, but his presentation is going to be in English, which is going to allow us to have comfortable follow-up. So I saved a few more minutes since protocol members have left. So I have spared 2 minutes from the greeting part, but you have given a time for Ms. Dominique, so I will make the best of my time. I'm the deputy chair of TURKSTAT, so I'm here to explain how we generate tourism statistics, what kind of innovations we have achieved. So these are the questions that I will try to answer. Of course, many of our data can be benefited from many speakers, but I'm here to explain what kind of innovations we've introduced to our recent efforts.
Sunumu ekrana alamadık.
Sunumla ilgili...
Sunum ekranda değil. Hah, geldi hocam.
Tamam, teşekkürler.
I have my slides on. Yes, thank you. Looking at the tourism statistics, of course, these are very significant. And tourism business itself is very significant, so I'm not here to talk about all of these, but of course, tourism policies have to be planned. It generates foreign exchange influx, and tourism sector is going to play a very important role in balancing the payments and current account deficit. And so this is why tourism statistics play a very important role. And in terms of tourism statistics, let me explain what we have been generating as TURKSTAT. As you know, tourism statistics are calculated to have an insight on the household domestic tourism or sectoral economic data. So this is what we are able to publish. We have tourism satellite account, and this is a huge novelty for us for this year. So macroeconomic indices will be shared with you thanks to this occasion. The economic data, sector-based economic data will play a very important role in understanding the tourism-intensive activities, and monthly and yearly annual data are regularly published. So how do we measure? This is the basis thanks to which we make our calculations. So we have international manuals which are made available by the UN. These are internationally accepted, and this is how we generate our data based on international manuals so that we allow for international comparability. How do we measure it? So we have a questionnaire survey for departing visitors, and we have arriving citizen survey, we have household domestic tourism survey, we have border entry data, residence determination survey, administrative records. What do we mean by administrative records? Excuse me. The credit card expenditure records or the Social Security Institute data are available. These are the pieces of data which allow us to make administrative records. So we carry out questionnaire surveys for approximately 400,000 departing residents. And again, the same questionnaire survey is available for 25,000 arriving domestic residents and 4,300 health institutions, and 37,000 surveys have been carried out for households. So tourism income and expenditure data are generated thanks to those questionnaire surveys. Of course, the Ministry of Tourism is kind of collaborating with us, especially in recent years. We have increased our levels of collaboration. I would like to take this opportunity for their close cooperation, and in the generation of these questionnaire surveys, their input is so valuable. And you can see some breakdowns of statistics calculation. So these are some of the breakdowns on household domestic tourism statistics. I am not going to go into the details to be efficient on time utilization. So this is the data on annual change in the number of visitors. So 48.3 million is the number of visitors that we've reached by the end of the third quarter of 2024. At the end of the first three quarters, so 46.9 billion is the amount that we have generated. This 46.9 billion of income is the total of the last 3 quarters, which is quite a record-breaking. This is what we can say. So you can see the fluctuation beginning from 2012 until 2020. So we have reached the levels by the end of the third quarter. 61.1 million is the travels, domestic travels. Let me go into the satellite calculations. Here's the basis. So internationally accepted sectors are given breakdowns to, so tourism share is tried to be understood as a result of this calculation. What do we mean by tourism in intensive sectors? So these are the passenger transport, accommodation services, food and beverage, travel agencies, and cultural services, sports and recreational services, transport equipment, rental services. These can be cited as the breakdown of tourism activities. And the tourism spendings by the domestics and the total spendings can be seen. So this is the equation. So, and some consumption items are also taken into consideration. So the total of this equation is calculated based on the proportions, thanks to which we also calculate tourism ratio. So we make these calculations in order to understand the ratio of tourism in the gross domestic product and in the total spendings. The gross value added and tourism direct gross value added are proportional to one another, and data of 2023 will be published in December. As you can see in this table, you can see domestic supply and international tourism consumption. By 2022, 3.3. I will show you the graph of it in a while, which is going to be shown soon. And by 2022, the share of tourism and direct gross value added in the gross value added is 4.4. And the share of tourism, direct gross value added, and tourism ratio are shown in the graph. So by 2019, the ratios have not reached yet. Is tourism performing well or not? So the increase rate of the GDP is ending up with their share being diminished. With this methodology, we can calculate tourism-related employment rates. 885,000 people have been employed by the end of 2022. Of course, this shouldn't be considered as the total employment generated by tourism. Of course, accommodation and food and beverage are the breakdowns of tourism, but these breakdowns businesses are not only for tourism, they're there for domestic consumption. So these numbers should be assessed as the direct tourism-related job generation numbers. So let me speed up very quickly. So tourism-related business lines have been calculated on monthly and yearly basis due to the high inflation rates. The TL-based comparisons might not be helping, and dollar-based comparisons were made. So you can see the monthly data, assumptions, and estimations. For the aviation sector, 32 billion. For accommodation, 21 billion. For food and beverage, 43 billion. Travel agency reservation business, 22 billion. So these are the turnover for these years, and you can appreciate these numbers by the number of employees, and the food and beverage industry creates jobs for almost 900,000 people. In the aviation business, 54,000 people have been employed. I told you that we have monthly data as well. Let me elaborate on them very quickly. As you can see in air transportation, you can see the number of wagers. Before the pandemic, you can see the numbers were low, but we have exceeded these numbers. Of course, the turnover rates, the turnovers are in TL, are in Turkish lira. And down there, you can see the service generation index. This is the index which we recently started to publish. Just like it is the case in the industry publications, this is the index that we create for service generation. So this is, we believe that we are implementing one of the best practices globally. On the bottom right, you can see the service producers price index, and these are the data sets and indices which we have created thanks to you, the data that you provided to us. And so we can say that in this particular slide, we have exceeded the numbers which were present before the pandemic. And in the service production, in service generation, the numbers are growing. Travel agency business is also increasing its numbers, and they are in tandem with the increasing numbers in reservations. Thank you very much. Please excuse me for exceeding my time. Thank you for your kind attention. Yes, distinguished Chair, thank you very much for your kind presentation. You have made a very detailed presentation, which is going to be very essential for us to generate data. Of course, many people might want to ask their questions, but I'm going to be the one to ask questions.
Özellikle bu uydu
But please feel free to ask your questions to the chairperson if you would like to. In one of your tables, I saw this data on turnover. So aviation makes the money, but the employment is generated by the hotels, hospitality business, which is very striking, especially after the pandemic. The prices have hiked up in transportation business. The levels are still there. They're making quite a lot of money, but that's not the story that we can refer to in the hospitality. Of course, it's not going to be my question by saying that TURKSTAT is doing this and that. Why do you think we generate satellite data in tourism? So are we going to get rid of the more conventional data sets? So why would we be in need of satellite data? This is what Europe has been doing, or the US has been doing. Actually, satellite data, of course, the conventional pieces of data are very valuable. They're going to be used, but macroeconomic insight is given by the satellite data. That's what I would like to say. So inside the GDP, we can see the sector-based breakdown in the GDP. So let me say this. The classification of economic activities is not the language of tourism. So classification of economic activities, actually in many of the activities, we can see 100% rate of ratio of tourism, share of tourism, but in which sector, how much share is there for tourism? We cannot say that in XY sectors, yes, tourism has XYZ amounts, shares. For example, in the presentation and food and beverage, what's the share of tourism? That's what we need to understand. And this is the piece of data with which we can understand the satellite data. Oktay Varlar is amongst us. As you know, he used to be the former chairperson of TURKSTAT. Of course, Oktay has exerted his best efforts to enlighten the situation from the data generation viewpoint for the tourism business. Actually, here's what you're saying. NACE-coded or ISIC-coded sectors can be differentiated from tourism business. So it can be direct or indirect relations across the data, but we're not going to have, we will no longer have that kind of discussions thanks to the satellite data. Let me ask a few more questions. Retrospective updating of the tourism data, that also created some discussions. What would you like to say about this issue? And also, regional tourism data is not created yet. We have Mr. Ömer, who's been working on this. We know that he has frequent visits to your institution, of course. For example, for Cappadocia, maybe a special tourism policy can be created, and maybe special tourism policy can also be created for Istanbul or for Cappadocia. And this is why, I mean, will we have a regional distribution of this data? Of course. So we would like to thank Mr. Ömer very much for pressurizing us, because it is very valuable for us to know what is needed by the user, data user. Having regional data will help people understand the tourism data of XYZ region, and this is what my colleagues have been doing with the design of 400 questionnaire surveys. We cannot directly create data thanks to 400 questionnaire surveys, but we are trying to employ new approaches in making researches so that we would have a method thanks to which we can understand this, the picture from provinces. So you have this method. Yes, we have not officially declared, but this is what we are doing on the backstage, in the kitchen. metaphorically speaking. Maybe after collecting your viewpoints, once we're sure, we're going to declare these pieces of data in the coming future, hopefully. In terms of revision, retrospective revision of tourism data, yes, what can you tell us about that? So here's the main thing that we do. Technologies are developing and there are new data resources, and we're able to access these resources. Corporate sources are now available. Credit card data are now being accessed, and this is what we can access, and we are integrating these pieces of data into our methodology. As a matter of fact, so having levels low or high is not the problem of TURKSTAT. Yes, sometimes we measured low, but there's a positive revision. But there's also positive revision on the side of the expenditures. So 400,000. So we carry out 400,000. But we are supporting it with alternative data sources. You continue to carry out this questionnaire survey, 400,000. Thank you very much, Deputy Chairman. Yes, Mr. Engin, please feel free to take to the rostrum. We believe that we will have more exciting presentation in which we will have real-time data.
Köpek araması bizim açımızdan bir problem değil ama tamam. Buyurun.
Peki ben o zaman hızlıca. Tamam, çok teşekkür ederim. Değerli katılımcılar, hepinizi...
Yes, distinguished participants. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm so happy to be with you in the TIF, as Mastercard is the natural business partner of TIF. Of course, we are trying to ensure that the expenditures by the visitors are made safely and securely as Mastercard. We're making data analytics, and strategic planning is the activity that we carry out. We are a technology company, so hopefully these pieces of data will be noticeable for you. Let me skip to my question, since we have very limited time. Before proceeding with my presentation, here's what I would like to say. Actually, that's what you know. Turkey continues to be a popular tourism destination, and there are miscellaneous demands brought by tourism. And Turkey is a country which can address all these requests, thanks to gastronomy, thanks to shopping, fashion business, etc. So Turkey is the apple of eye of many people. So in terms of turnover, credit card spendings has increased by 7% in terms of the number of transactions. There is this increase by 17%. This slide might seem a bit hectic. The British tourists make spendings in Spain, France, and in Ireland. So the ones in brackets show the fact that their turnovers have increased. So Turkey ranks the 11th in terms of the British spendings, and there's an increase by 26%. And the German tourists make spendings in Italy, France, and Austria. Turkey ranks the 12th, and there's this increase by 12%. So looking at these tables, and the Saudi Arabia and the Arab Emirates. So there's this decrease, there's this drop in those countries. When it comes to Kazakhstan, Switzerland and Belgium, they increase their spendings in Turkey, which is so positive for us. So in general, you can see the top 10 countries. Great Britain comes the first, and there's an slight increase, and we have Germany, Netherlands, and America. So, looking at the recent policies, which are deemed successful, diversification of countries can be observed, which is good news. Japan, Korea, India, and Kazakhstan and China cards have spent in Turkey, and their ratios increased quite considerably, despite the fact that their shares seem so small. For example, 69% is on the side of Japan, and a 45% increase is on the side of India, etc. But these are quite promising figures, and Istanbul remains to be the favorite, the most favorite city, despite the fact that its share is dropped compared to the previous year's figures. And Antalya Muğla comes after Istanbul as the provinces in terms of this industry. So we gave more restaurant-related services to the visitors, international visitors. On the left-hand side, you can see the abbreviations of the countries: Great Britain, Germany, Netherlands, United States, and Saudi Arabia. And you can see the sector-based, industry-based spendings. And Saudi Arabian visitors spend mostly in fashion and garment business.
Neşeli kartlar.
British origin cards are making spendings in restaurants, and this is what the Americans do. On the ticket size is shown in the table on the right hand side, and the size of amounts per cards. For example, Saudi Arabian cards are making expenditures more than $500 compared to the levels of the other countries cited on the table. You can see the spending trends across provinces, and you can see the card spendings. You can see the UK origin cards, and they're making most of their spendings in Muğla, and then Antalya, and then in Istanbul. There's a slight increase in Istanbul, and every single city, maybe that's what you've noticed, the spending composition changes. You can see the German origin cards. You can see they make most of their spendings in Antalya. They spend mostly in garments and accommodation, which is contrary to the Great Britain origin cards. Looking at the American origin cards, Istanbul comes the first. Jewelry is the affluent segment.
Suudi Arabistan kartlarına baktığımızda da
Looking at the Saudi Arabia origin cards, the spendings in Istanbul drops. They mostly spend in garments. Let me speed up very quickly. When it comes to health tourism, Turkey performs so well. There's this increase by 15%. This is what the general turnover tells us. I can share these pieces of data if you want. Let me skip very quickly. Outbound tourists, due to the seasonal changes, you can see the spendings. Greece is the most striking country. We can see the visa-related correlation, and we can say that the Turks spend quite higher in Greece, and they spend also high in Italy, mostly in food and beverage business. They make most of their spendings in those areas.
son olarak da Yunanistan'daki harcama kompozisyonu bu. Gördüğünüz üzere
You can see the composition of spendings made in Greece, and you can see the public spendings have quite increased. These are based on assumptions, of course. We can say that the visa spendings are made mostly by these instruments. Similarly, you can see the spending composition of our tourists going to Germany. You can say that the garments and fashion are mostly spent in. London comes the first, and then we have Georgia, Paris, Dubai, Milan, and New York. This is the composition. And this composition remains the same in the latest. What do we spend in London? We spend mostly in jewelry and garments in London. So we can say that wealthy people go to Great Britain mostly. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Engin, thank you so much. I have one question, and then we will close the session since we have TURKSTAT Deputy Chair. It's quite striking. You have real-time data. Are they publicly available? Are they sold? I mean, these credit card data, can we access them? So as long as we digitize the retail industry, the flow of data can be tremendously facilitated for you and for us. So what is the capacity of your data to make retrospective estimation. So that's what we can do, but here's our advantage. In terms of digitalization, Turkey is quite competitive. So credit card acceptance level and the utilization rate is quite high, and thanks to this we can make healthy and robust calculations. This is what we can do together with the municipalities, with the associations, with the professional unions. So you're the focal point of Marbe. So in Cappadocia, a typical German tourist, what does she spends on, etc. So this is what you can make estimation on very quickly and very easily.
Our panelists, before we close, please. Thank you. Çok teşekkürler.
Thank you.